It never happens all at once. It begins quietly, in moments so small, so subtle that you hardly notice you're slipping away from yourself. Maybe it was that Wednesday afternoon when the rain tapped softly on your window, your half-drunk coffee cooling slowly by your side, and the screen stared back at you, filled with tasks that no longer felt like opportunities but obligations. Or perhaps it was late at night, when the rest of the world had fallen into peaceful silence and you found yourself awake, not out of passion, but restlessness, staring at the ceiling, asking yourself, when did it become so empty? You sit there now, at the same desk where once your dreams spilled out effortlessly onto pages filled with possibility. Your eyes drift to familiar notes, plans scribbled hastily, visions once clear and vibrant, now fading into pale echoes. You feel something deep within, a quiet ache, a tender grief, like losing a friend you never thought you'd be without. And you wonder softly, when did I stop wanting this? The memories flood back vividly. Those early days when your heart raced not from fear, but from excitement, from pure, unfiltered joy. You recall mornings that needed no alarms because your dreams were loud enough to pull you awake. Nights when exhaustion felt sacred because every drop of sweat, every lost hour of sleep, moved you closer to something meaningful, something true. But now it's different. You've been chasing shadows of the fire you once had. Tasks once thrilling have become routine. Success feels hollow, and the applause, when it comes, feels distant, disconnected. You used to believe reaching the goal would fill you, but instead, it left you emptier, realizing achievement means nothing without purpose. So let me ask you, pause for a moment, take a breath, and answer honestly, not from habit, but from deep within your heart. Why did you start? Don't tell me the polished answer, the practiced speech, the story crafted for applause. Tell me the raw one, the honest one, the reason that made your hands tremble and your eyes shine with a strange mixture of fear and joy. What was it that made your heart whisper fiercely, I have to do this? Even if no one understands, even if no one ever sees, even if I stand completely alone, was it freedom? Was it to finally speak a truth no one else dared voice? Was it the hope that somewhere out there, your words, your work, your existence might heal another's silent suffering? Was it simply because something within you whispered softly, yet insistently, this matters? Somewhere along the way, you stopped feeding that sacred flame. You began editing your passion, managing your ambition, taming your dreams into something easily digestible, something the world could approve. You traded authenticity for acceptance, depth for surface, and realness for the illusion of safety. And now your soul cries out, not for success, not for recognition, but simply for truth, for authenticity, for that rare, pure feeling of alignment, of being so wholly yourself that the world's approval no longer matters. You see, your exhaustion isn't from doing too much, it's from being too little of who you truly are. You don't need another inspirational quote or productivity hack. You don't need another external voice pushing you forward. What you need is to return home, to yourself. You need to find the silence where your own voice whispers again, where your dreams aren't tasks, but sacred promises kept only to you. Underneath the numbness, beneath the burnout, beyond the endless list of things that no longer excite you, that spark still lives, waiting, patiently, quietly. It has never left you. You simply forgot it was yours to nurture, not theirs to extinguish. Let today be the day you stop pretending it's okay to live without that fire. Let today be the day you softly remind yourself, not to impress others, not for external validation, but simply for the quiet peace of your own heart. I am not finished. I am only just remembering why I began. And in that gentle remembrance, in that simple yet profound recognition, lies your rebirth. Not loud, not dramatic, just deeply, quietly powerful. The spark is still yours. And yes, it's enough to begin again. It starts quietly, almost politely, without fanfare or noticeable chaos, just a slow, gentle unraveling, like the edge of a sweater that catches on something unseen, unraveling thread by thread until the garment is unrecognizable. It begins in tiny moments, in invisible compromises made in silence, where your voice fades into a whisper so faint you barely realize it's gone. It's found in the nods you give, even when your heart silently shakes its head. the smiles you wear that never touch your eyes, and the yes that spills from your lips before you can pause to consider if it aligns with your truth. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and not recognized the eyes staring back at you? Not because the features have changed, but because the spark, the fire, the familiar glow of recognition is missing, replaced by something distant, something politely resigned, something almost mournful. This was Leora's quiet realization one mundane Tuesday morning. The world outside hummed softly in its usual rhythm, oblivious and uninterrupted. As she caught a glance of herself in the hallway mirror, she froze. There was no dramatic crash, no obvious sign that something monumental was shifting. Just an unsettling moment where she looked into her own eyes and saw nothing she remembered clearly. It was like trying to make out the outlines of someone familiar through thick fog. It wasn't immediate panic she felt. Instead, it was a profound and deep-seated sadness, a kind of gentle mourning for the girl who once laughed without reserve, who danced in her kitchen simply because the music moved her, who made impulsive decisions rooted in joy, not calculated caution. For the woman who once dreamed freely and boldly without first measuring those dreams against the scale of someone else's approval. How many of us live lives that look pristine and polished from the outside but feel hollow within? How many mornings do we quietly lose pieces of ourselves in the pursuit of acceptance, belonging, or peace at any cost? How often have you shrunk yourself just enough to fit comfortably within someone else's expectations, so much so that the mirror no longer reflects your essence, only your compliance? We become masters of performance, fluent in the language of others' comfort. We speak softly, we step carefully, we smile when our heart is breaking, and we laugh quietly to keep from disturbing the fragile peace we've worked so tirelessly to maintain. And yet, in these quiet sacrifices, we unknowingly drift further from the shore of who we truly are, until the coastline of our own self-recognition is barely visible on the horizon. What about you? Whose life have you silently begun living? Whose dreams do you chase each day, mistaking them for your own? Whose expectations have carved your path so meticulously that you forgot what it feels like to wander, to explore, to make choices from your own deep, resonant truth? The mirror no longer recognized Leora, not because she had failed, but because she had succeeded in the wrong ways. She had become everything to everyone but herself. Capable, dependable, composed. These were the labels she had worn proudly, until they became chains, until they became suffocating. And yet, here's the sacred paradox. Recognizing your reflection has faded is the first sign of remembrance. The ache that you feel, that tender sorrow, is not a flaw. It's the call home. It is your deepest self whispering, softly but insistently, reminding you that life was never meant to be a flawless performance, but a vibrant expression of who you genuinely are. So today, can you let yourself grieve the loss? Can you sit quietly with the sadness, not to linger in despair, but to honor the truth of your heart's quiet rebellion? Ask yourself gently, who was I before I was told who to be? What did I long for before I learned what was acceptable? What dreams would I dare to hold if approval wasn't my currency? Let these questions seep into the soil of your soul, not demanding instant answers, but watering the roots of remembrance. Because remembering isn't about creating someone new, it's about reclaiming someone who was never truly lost, only waiting patiently beneath layers of silent compromise. And maybe right now it feels foreign. Maybe the way back home feels like walking a path obscured by years of careful avoidance. But know this, the road home begins precisely here, in front of the mirror that no longer recognizes you. It begins in this courageous act of admitting, quietly and truthfully, I have forgotten myself, but I am willing to remember. I am ready to return. I am coming home. And in this sacred moment, the mirror begins, slowly but surely, to recognize you once more. There is a kind of heaviness that doesn't announce itself with drama or fanfare. It arrives quietly, almost gently, like a shadow slowly stretching across the floor as daylight fades, unnoticed until it blankets the entire room. It first feels like a subtle fatigue, the kind you blame on long days or restless nights. Your shoulders ache from carrying invisible burdens, and your smile holds on just a bit too tightly, masking the gentle erosion of your spirit beneath. At first, you might dismiss it. This heaviness, telling yourself it's temporary, just a momentary slump. But soon the quiet fatigue turns to quiet numbness. It spreads softly, invisibly through your days, like ink bleeding slowly into water, until clarity is no longer recognizable. You continue to function. Emails are answered, meetings attended, conversations held. But beneath these actions, something crucial begins to fade, your very essence. Consider Michael, a quiet man with a gentle demeanor who dedicated his life to teaching and nurturing those around him. Every day, Michael showed up. Reliable, patient, consistent. He became the glue holding his family, colleagues, and community together, admired for his steadiness and calm. Yet no one saw how each day took a quiet toll, how every nod of compliance drained a little more color from his eyes, how each swallowed truth added another weight to his heart. Then one mundane morning, standing at the kitchen sink waiting for the kettle to whistle, Michael stared into the gentle swirl of steam rising from his mug, and something inside him finally whispered a question too painful to ignore. Where have I gone? It wasn't anger or bitterness that broke him open. It was grief. Grief for the vibrant dreams he'd quietly folded away. Grief for the laughter that used to spill freely from his lips. Grief for the voice he'd slowly trained himself to silence. He realized then, in that quiet, unremarkable moment, that he hadn't just lost touch with his truth, he had abandoned it altogether, all for the sake of preserving a fragile peace that had never fully included him. Now let me gently ask you, when was the last time you spoke words that genuinely belonged to you, not carefully shaped to fit the comfort of others? When was the last moment you allowed yourself to exist fully, unapologetically, without immediately shrinking to soothe someone else's insecurity? When did you last let yourself breathe deeply, freely, without worrying who might be watching? Because there is a cost to disappearing. Even if your disappearance is wrapped in kindness, the toll is not just your happiness or your voice, it is your very life. It's the slow erosion of your inner world, the quiet compromise of your authentic self. The peace you've worked so diligently to preserve isn't peace at all. It's a ceasefire you enforce by betraying your own essence. Maybe you've believed that staying quiet was noble, that keeping the peace was an act of love. But true peace never demands that you erase yourself. Real love never requires your silence as proof of devotion. Yet somehow, you convinced yourself that your presence was a disruption, that your voice was an inconvenience. But consider this deeply and let it echo within you. What if your silence isn't noble? What if it's simply a habit born out of fear? What if the calm you've cultivated isn't tranquility, but resignation? Imagine now, just for a moment, what it might feel like to stop holding your breath, to stand firmly in the truth of your own existence, not in defiance, not even in rebellion, but in quiet, sacred affirmation. Imagine declaring, gently but clearly, I will no longer vanish to maintain comfort for others. It may feel terrifying, it might even feel selfish at first, but beneath that initial discomfort, something powerful will stir, something that feels both new and achingly familiar. A deep remembrance of the vibrant being you've always been beneath layers of politeness and compliance. A recognition that you are not too much, that you never have been. You've merely been surrounded by spaces too small to hold the full scope of your presence. So here, in this sacred pause, consider the radical simplicity of ceasing to disappear. You do not have to apologize for your truths anymore. You do not need permission to claim your space. Your voice is not an interruption. It is an invitation to genuine connection. This chapter is not about confrontation or battle. It is about reclaiming a gentleness that does not come at the expense of your authenticity. It is about rediscovering the quiet strength that emerges when you finally refuse to negotiate your truth. Let this be your gentle declaration. You will no longer shrink to make others feel larger. You will no longer whisper to ensure someone else's comfort. You will no longer vanish to keep the illusion of peace alive, because the true cost of disappearing isn't just losing your voice, it's losing your life, slowly, silently, unnoticed by everyone except the one who matters most, yourself. So breathe in deeply now, let your shoulders drop, and quietly, fiercely promise yourself, I am done disappearing. From today, I am here, fully here. There is a silence that feels like peace, And there is a silence that feels like abandonment, and for most of your life, you've mistaken the second for the first, breathing quietly through the empty spaces, smiling softly through conversations where your voice was never truly heard, holding onto fragments of approval mistaken for love. You convinced yourself that enduring quietly was strength, that silence was harmony, and that existing softly was enough. But there comes a moment, and maybe that moment is right now, when the silence no longer feels calm, it feels deafening, not through any dramatic event or sudden revelation, but in a quiet, unremarkable instant, perhaps while sipping your morning coffee, staring into its surface, realizing the reflection looking back no longer feels familiar. Or maybe it's during a routine drive home, the sunset painting the sky in shades you've long stopped noticing, when suddenly you feel a sharp clarity. You've spent your entire life waiting for permission to exist fully. In this sacred pause, you start to remember. You remember that your heart was never meant to shrink just to fit someone else's comfort zone. You remember that your voice wasn't given to you to remain tucked behind cautious lips, unspoken and uncertain. You remember that you were never supposed to trade pieces of your wholeness in exchange for conditional acceptance. Can you feel it now? The heaviness of all the years spent politely fading away, giving space to everyone else while denying your own right to breathe fully. The quiet grief of all the words swallowed back, all the dreams put on pause, all the laughter softened into whispers just to keep a peace that was never truly peaceful. Now, let me ask you gently, not to trigger pain, but to awaken truth. How many versions of yourself have you buried beneath silence, hoping one day someone else would give you permission to let them breathe? How much of your life have you spent quietly apologizing, not for mistakes, but for simply existing? And what if the peace you've been so diligently guarding was never your peace at all, but the comfort of those who could only love you when you stayed small? This realization is both liberation and grief. It will break open parts of you long sealed shut, not with force, but with the tender truth of recognition. You will begin to understand deeply, perhaps for the first time, that real love, genuine acceptance, and authentic peace will never require you to abandon yourself. Yes, stepping into this truth means risking the carefully balanced calm you've maintained. It means letting go of the roles you've mastered, the identities you've crafted for approval, and the relationships built on silent compliance. But in that letting go, you will discover something extraordinary. Your own permission. Permission to be whole without needing validation. Permission to speak your truth without whispering. Permission to exist without constantly checking who's comfortable with your presence. This is where you return, not as someone different, but as the person you were always meant to be before the world taught you otherwise. This return isn't loud or boastful. It's gentle yet unstoppable, like a tide returning to shore. It's reclaiming your space without apology, finding sanctuary within your own silence. This time, a silence filled with acceptance, not absence. And yes, it may feel lonely at first. The world may seem quieter, emptier, without the noise of others' demands. But listen carefully, because in that silence, for the very first time, you'll clearly hear your own heartbeat, your own breath, your own voice saying softly, "You've always been enough." Take a deep breath and let it in. Feel the truth settling within you. You are allowed to exist fully. You are allowed to stop hiding. You are allowed to stop waiting for permission that was always yours to give. Because you cannot truly heal in the place that broke you. You can only learn to survive there. And my dear, survival was never the purpose of your life. It is time now to live boldly, to love deeply, to exist wholly. So return to the center of your soul. Return to the warmth of your truth. Return to the life that celebrates your fullness, never your disappearance. You have waited long enough. You have earned every breath. You are finally home. Welcome back to yourself.